Good evening, everyone, and welcome to another round of sound. This is the #1 Cochran Sports Showdown. I'm Bob Pompeani, and as always, we have a lot to talk about. The Penguins open up this week at home Thursday night. We'll get some hockey talk going on. We'll also talk about the big game tomorrow night, which is the Bengals coming to Pittsburgh. 2 0-3 teams, both in desperate need of a win. But the #1 topic tonight on the #1 Cochran Sports Showdown will be the Pirates, who did something the Pirates always seem to do, a bad PR move at least. Fire a manager after he speaks with the media and gives you the indication he still may be here. We'll talk about that with our panel, left to right on your television screen. We have with us tonight Mr. Colin Dunlap, who anchors the Fan Morning Show on 93.7 The Fan. In the middle, Post-Gazette columnist and host of the Cook and Joe Show, 93.7 The Fan, Mr. Ron Cook, and Mr. Jason Mackey, who is the beat writer with the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette for the Pirates. And Jason, we will start with you. I don't think there was any thought that somebody was going to lose a job here. I thought it was going to be everyone based on what we've seen after 4 years. But the way this was handled today, to me, bothered me more than what actually happened. Take us through that and why you think maybe that I'm right on that and they handled it all the wrong way.
You want me to sit here and just tell you why you were right, Pom?
Yes, thank you.
All right. No, there are a couple things about what happened today that were a little bit screwy. I think one of them that irked people, that it came out, and this was supposed to be Steve Blass's last day, but I think that the thing that irked people more was why did Neil Huntington keep his job? And I think that's a valid question. I mean, Clint Hurdle can only do so much with what he's given. And this season, when you're picking up relievers who have been DFA'd by other teams and you're trying to cobble together a bullpen, we can talk about the trades that Neil Huntington has made that haven't worked out, how they've drafted, developed. I mean, there are much bigger problems with the Pirates than what Clint Hurdle is even able to do. Now, that being said, I do give the Pirates credit for doing something. Part of me worried that they weren't going to do anything. They were just going to be sort of complicit in all of this, and it is a move that they have to eat salary on. I worry that they didn't make all of the necessary moves.
I don't know how much credit you can give them. This feels like an all-or-nothing proposition, and the Pirates tried to split it halfway. I'm just wondering now what the tenuous nature of the job status of Neil Huntington is moving forward. Does this mean he has one last chance? Does this mean why should Neil Huntington now have a say in when he's not been able to cultivate or find any minor league talent or get it right from an organizational standpoint in the past few years? Why should he have a say, and probably a pretty big say, in bringing in a next manager? This had to be an all or nothing. Everybody goes or everybody stays. It couldn't have been split down the middle, Ron, in my eyes.
The only way it would have been good as everybody would go would be the owner included, and that isn't going to happen. As far as I'm concerned, you can replace the manager, and you might get lucky. You might find another Jim Leyland. Also could find a John Russell. Replace Huntington. It doesn't matter as long as Bob Nutting owns the team. This is America. You get what you pay for. He is not going to spend any money. It's not going to impact his profits. I think he wants to win. Everybody wants to win. Is he committed to doing it? I don't believe that for 1 second. So, I mean, I thought it would be Huntington and Hurdle or neither, but I don't think it really matters as long as Nutting owns the team.
So, I mean, I see one thing here that I don't disagree with you, Ron. I don't want to refute that argument, but we have seen teams that can win on the cheap, and they do it when they perfect the draft and development model. I mean, look at the Tampa Bay Rays.
But this guy can't draft and develop. Well, that's the big problem.
I was getting there.
Well, he's saying then replace Huntington.
Yeah, right. I'm saying that if you overhaul the entire system, and let's say, you know, for example, we bring in underlings from the, I don't know, Astros or Rays or whatever, a bunch of young, hungry, eager guys, and then you put them in those opportunities, then yeah, I think they might have something. But if you keep the same model and only remove the manager, that's not removing enough.
No, and that's why, okay, so they've determined, and you heard Bob Nutting on his statement. You didn't hear him, by the way. Nobody hears him. He should be heard from. It's gotten too far where the owner is an absentee owner. And if you want to run away from the criticism, then you should get criticized more for it. I don't understand why he's not here. I don't understand why it's statement only, especially for something like this. But having gone off on a little tangent there, so Ron, I want to ask you about who's next then. Because it seems to me that they'll probably pick someone on this staff already because they're now, Clint Hurdle, $6 million to do nothing.
Well, I mean, obviously the choice is, the illogical in-house choice would be Jeff Bannister, who had some success as Texas manager. They seemingly have been grooming Tom Prince for this. I don't know. I have respect for both those guys, but I think it might, if you're not going to change Huntington, maybe go outside and get some sort of different voice in here. But if they get off to a rotten start again next year, which I don't see how they're not,
right,
with Tyone not coming back, Vasquez, your best pitcher, obviously you can't trade him in the offseason for a starter. I don't know who's going to be in the rotation. Maybe Huntington gets fired next June. What does that do for the manager he brings in here? I don't know. I think they need to go outside and take a chance on some young, hungry guy.
I absolutely adore Jeff Bannister. I think he's a great man. I know he's a great man. I know he's a great baseball man. And I know he'd want to manage in Pittsburgh. Again, it's a helpless situation. If you are going to not pay people, and if you're going to have the payroll that you're going to have, you have to hit on scouting, you have to hit on draft, you have to hit on development. They've not hit on any of them. They've not hit on any of them. So you could have Connie Mack managing this team. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter.
What's he developed? Hunting 2 pitchers in 12 years?
Right, and what hitters?
And one was a #1 overall pick, Cole, and the other, Tyone, was a #2. You better get those right. Who else have they developed, the Pirates pitchers?
They haven't. And the guy
in-house.
they had this season, Ron Mitch Keller, I mean.
Maybe him.
Maybe. I mean, we're taking a pretty big leap there. To me, I think we're all sort of singing out of the same hymnal here. I think they need to have somebody with different ideas, with a different approach to things. I question how much a manager is going to be able to influence that, but not more of the same old, same old.
Should have been the general manager every bit as much, if not more, than the manager.
All right, real quick, I want to ask this before we wrap this segment up, and I may want to carry some stuff over, but Colin,
yes,
did Clint Hurdle saying what he said to The Athletic the other day when that story broke, did that doom him? Because he kind of went unfiltered there and came up with something. He said he was assured by someone, and Neil Huntington today said, well, blame me for that. But come on.
Well,
did he do that by design?
I think perhaps there could be a middle ground here, and there was a miscommunication in so much as their meetings were about what they were going to do moving forward, and Clint Hurdle took that as, well, I'm going to be the manager moving forward. Like they were wide conversations about, hey, in the future, and Clint, I'm guessing that Clint Hurdle never had a direct conversation with the general manager and said, hey, like, am I the manager next year or not? I don't think that conversation in a yes or no, with a yes or no answer ever happened.
Well, I don't know how the general manager could have assured anybody of their job because he shouldn't have known about his.
Correct. And he seemed, I will say this about Neil Huntington, he seemed very human today in so much as it looked like it bothered him
and it might not
have
been his decision, Jason. Right. I don't know. Maybe it just was strictly Nutting's call. I had to be Nutting's call because he's the one that's got to pay for the $6 million over the next 2 years.
Right. One of the things that baffles me about what Hurdle said, I've heard all the conspiracy theories that he's out to do something or he's trying to get himself fired or manipulate the situation. I don't understand that. I'm more in the camp of what Colin said, that this is some sort of misunderstanding, because if Clint Hurdle is up to something shady or weird here, I mean, what's the end goal? What's he actually going to accomplish by saying this? I think it's a misunderstanding. I think Hurdle, basically thought because they were going down this road that meant that he was in, and he probably should have sought assurance elsewhere.
All right, we have plenty more coming up. We'll get into the Steelers and the Bengals and what it means tomorrow night. But before we do that, I want to talk about football season since it is underway. And I want to remind you, you can pick up a new #1 Cochran Chevy now and be ready for those tailgate parties and road trips. And you better get there fast because #1 Cochran Chevrolet's amazing buy and lease specials are not going to last too much longer. Get the best offers on the season on big-name Chevy players, including Silverado, Traverse, and Malibu. Only at the new #1 Cochran Chevrolet Cranberry, formerly Kenny Ross. Or visit CochranChevrolet.com. Steelers and Penguins, all yet to come right here on the #1 Cochran Sports Showdown. The #1 Cochran Sports Showdown is brought to you by #1 Cochran, Go One Better, and by Highmark Blue Cross Blue Shield. Have a greater hand in your health.